evening, and happy Halloween. I couldn't just let my favorite holiday go by without telling a personal, scary story. Everything you're about to hear actually happened. This was a long time ago, probably close to 15 years or so. So I can't say every single detail is perfectly correct, but I think you'll get the gist of it. That being said, here's the story of when I lived in a haunted house. Now, we moved into this house when I was about 8 or 9 years old. From the moment I stepped in, I did not like the vibe that this house gave off. Something just felt wrong about it, like there was something there. But being a kid, I paid absolutely no attention to that. All I wanted to know was, what did my new room look like? Who were the neighborhood kids? And if I could play with that dog that I saw across the street. But under all the usual kid excitement of being somewhere new, I could tell something was wrong. I could tell that something was there. Anytime I was in that house, it never felt like I was alone, even if it seemed like I was. And when there were people around me, it always felt like there was this outside observer just looking in on what we were doing. Sometimes I felt it in the room, but sometimes my eyes were drawn to a window, and I would look out, expecting that someone was there, even though no one ever was. Apparently, I wasn't the only one to feel this way. But I didn't find out till several years later that one of my aunties and my grandma also felt uneasy in the house. But of course, no one trusts a kid to tell them anything, even if it's something that they should know. Even my dad had an experience, apparently, where one night, when he was working late in his office, he heard footsteps down the hallway. Footsteps that sounded exactly like my mother's when she wore her slippers. But when he got up to check, he saw no one in the hallway. And when he looked in their bedroom, she was fast asleep. Odd feelings of being watched aside, this house also brought out odd habits and feelings that I never had anywhere else. For example, when I moved in, I started fearing the dark. Now you might think that this is something that every kid goes through, and you're not wrong. The dark is strange and mysterious, but in this house, every dark corner or dim hallway felt like there was something hiding in it. It was so bad that I would leave lights on and my parents would be upset that I was wasting electricity. And if I had to go into the dark alone, if I had to go through the hallway to get to the bathroom, or my room, or my parents' room, I would force someone to walk with me, usually my little brother, or if no one was actually around, I'd wrap my old blanket around my shoulders hold on to a stuffed animal, and sprint as fast as my little legs could take me. I did not like the dark in this house. There was something there, staring back at me, and I didn't want to know what it was. One time, I woke up in the early hours of the morning to use the bathroom. As I was washing my hands, I got a strange feeling on the back of my neck, and I looked up into the mirror. You know when you see a silhouette, a shadow in the dark, you can tell that there's something solid there, even if you can't make out the actual shape. You can tell that the background is being hidden by something. In that moment, I knew that there was something behind me. I didn't know what, or who, or why it was watching me, but I knew that there was something there. What I didn't know was that this was only the first of many instances where I would feel this presence again. Things started getting worse after that. One night, a month or so after we'd finally moved in completely, I woke up very early in the morning. Now, I was a kid who tossed and turned a lot. I moved in my sleep, and when I did wake up, I would move around to readjust. But this night, I found myself completely frozen. This was the first night I ever experienced sleep paralysis. The position I was stuck in was on my side, facing the doorway, staring directly out into the dark hall. I could see perfectly well the complete darkness that existed outside my doorway, but still I could feel something darker, denser, just past the doorway, like it was waiting for a chance to come in. The sleep paralysis didn't last long, at least not that I remember. I fell asleep, fitfully afraid and wishing I could call out to my parents. But I fell asleep, and when I woke the next morning, I was perfectly fine. Now, even as a kid, I was strangely logical. I tried to pass it off as a bad dream or a strange nightmare, and I decided to keep it to myself. I continued to get sleep paralysis, not often, maybe once or twice every couple of weeks, but it was enough to scare me, but not enough for me to actually do anything about it. I just hoped it would go away, fall asleep, and wake up the next day feeling still very tired, but alive, and not actually hurt. So I kept it to myself. But as time went on, these sleep paralysis episodes happened more and more, until they were happening at least once a week. Even still, at this point though, I didn't ask for help. But there was one night that changed everything. I woke up early hours of the morning expecting to be frozen in place, terrified and waiting to feel that presence in the doorway. But this time, I wasn't. I could move around. I was able to turn. I could sit up properly and look in the doorway. And I couldn't feel anything. There was nothing there. Just normal shadow and darkness. Nothing sinister. But then I tried to lie down and shift myself so my back was to the door. Someone, something, grabbed me. I felt something take my shoulders and push me over, so I was forced to look towards the doorway once again. In this time, I was sure it wasn't sleep paralysis, because this time I fought to try to turn over again, to turn my back on this thing that had been watching me. But it pinned me down, forcing my face to stare into the darkness, but instead of a presence in the doorway, there was something inches away from my face. I could feel something staring into my eyes, even though I couldn't see its own. The will to fight completely disappeared, and all I felt was fear. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hide. It got to the point where I felt physical pain in my shoulders from being held down. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but I remember crying, wanting to scream for my parents, and feeling a hand over my mouth when I tried. I told my parents what happened after that. There was no hiding it. There was no hiding my fear anymore. I hated that house, and I hated the thing that was terrorizing me. I started sleeping on the floor of my younger brother's room. I would bring my sleeping bag and pillows and extra blankets and sleep right next to the edge of his bed, so I knew that he was there. It got to the point where my dad would even go into the room and stay there with us, just to make sure that I wouldn't have another episode. I never had anything as intense as that one night happen ever again. I've never actually had any sleep paralysis episodes since living in that house. Moving out of that house was one of the happiest days of my life. I counted down the days of being able to sleep without feeling afraid of what might happen when I woke up. I stopped dreading the night and the dark and what evils might be hiding within them. When we officially moved, the side of the house in the rearview mirror, it felt like something was letting go of me. Like whatever had had a hold on me was anchored to that spot, and it couldn't stay with the little girl it liked to terrify. For whatever reason, I was free, and I wasn't gonna go digging for answers. Living in that house shaped a lot in who I am and how I view the world beyond life. It made me wary and aware of the energies around me. I won't say that I'm a psychic or that I have supernatural abilities, but I can say that I do sense energies. I can tell when I'm alone in a room and when I'm not. And I can tell when those energies around me have good intentions or bad. I haven't felt anything like the thing in that house ever since, but I'm on the lookout, always a little afraid of any place I've never been to before. I am keeping my fingers crossed that I'm never so unlucky to end up in such a place again. I hope you enjoyed my story. Whether or not you believe it actually happened is up to you. But I'm not here to convince you, just to share a tale from my favorite holiday. Good night, everyone, and happy Halloween.